Good evening. My name is Max Lucerna, and at 27 years old, I reside in the state of Paraná. I reminisce about a period of my adolescence marked by some childish pranks with my friends. We had a penchant for activities that gave us an adrenaline rush, such as jumping off bridges into rivers in the dead of night, traversing deserted roads at dawn, and even scaling the cemetery wall to wander among the tombs. In the graveyard of my locality, there was a night watchman who was not liked by anyone. He treated his workplace as if it were his own property, keeping a watchful eye on everything and ready to reprimand any action he deemed inappropriate in that place. However, as was typical of our youth, the opinions of that gentleman did not deter us, neither me nor my friends. Sometimes we would enter the cemetery and run to the other side just to see him furiously chasing after us, yelling at us to leave. He was already an elderly man, and to this day I wonder about the reason for his so fervent dedication to that realm of the dead. It was said that his wife was buried there, and he watched over her eternal rest. But to me it seemed more like, without any other occupation, he had decided to assume the role of a guard dog for those who had passed on. One night, returning home with two friends, we decided to pass through the cemetery where the old watchman kept his vigil and run across it. We climbed the wall and peered to locate the guard, thus avoiding a direct confrontation at the start of our run. It was then that we saw him lying stretched out on the ground, inert as if he had fainted. I jumped over the wall to offer help, but my companions insisted that he was pretending. I ignored their words and approached him. The man was unconscious and his body was cold. I immediately took out my cell phone and called the emergency services. Then I searched for the keys in his pocket, opened the gate, and ran to call some neighbors who lived nearby, requesting their assistance for the gentleman while the ambulance did not arrive. Some residents brought blankets and a pillow to support the watchman's head, and shortly thereafter, the ambulance arrived to take him to the hospital. The people who approached questioned me about how I had found him, and I related that my friends and I were observing from the gate and had seen him collapse. A few days later, I learned that the gentleman had returned to work and had expressed a desire to find the person who had helped him to thank him. However, I hesitated to go see him, as since childhood, my friends and I had bothered him, and I feared that if he found out that it was I who had helped him, he might reprimand me physically. Until one day, returning from school in the late afternoon, I passed in front of the cemetery and he called me. Even feeling apprehensive about what he might say, I approached him. The gentleman then spoke. "Thank you very much, young man. If you hadn't helped me, I would have spent the night there on the ground. Perhaps I would have even died." He added, "I know you have the habit of running past here, but that doesn't matter now because you helped me and I will never forget that." I asked him what had happened, if he had fainted due to illness or some other reason. He smiled enigmatically and replied, "That night when I fainted, there had been 2 burials here, and the families had left many candles and tributes at the tombs. I was standing here in front when I noticed something moving from one side to the other on the wall, just as night fell. I took my flashlight, but I didn't turn it on so as not to attract attention. Then I saw that thing jumping and going towards the tombs that still had the burning candles, and I thought it was some prankster wanting to desecrate the place. I approached stealthily to identify the individual before revealing myself. It was then that I beheld a demonic creature staring intently at the tombs, as if it were sniffing something. I remained hidden, as I do not possess any type of weapon. Then I saw the creature climb onto the places where the bodies were buried and begin to extinguish the candles. At that moment, it turned and saw me watching, letting out such a horrendous scream that I staggered and ended up falling. The only thing I remember after that is waking up in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. I asked him what he had seen, what that creature was like, He replied, "I can't describe it precisely. I had never witnessed anything even remotely similar. It resembled a kind of black demon coming directly from hell. I can't express in words what my eyes beheld." I questioned how he still found the courage to work there, even after having witnessed something so sinister. He explained, "I wouldn't have come back anymore, but they haven't found a younger replacement, and as long as they don't, I will continue to come. However, I will no longer act as I did before. I will leave this gate always open and stay more, or here in front. If something strange appears, I will not confront it like a madman as I used to. I am old, and it is high time for me to retire." I bid farewell to the gentleman and returned home. And every time I came back from school, I would pass by the cemetery to talk to him, until one day I noticed a young man who would replace him in his post. I never asked him where he lived, but sometime later I met him in a supermarket. He told me that he was alone at home, taking care of himself, and that he was very well. I said goodbye, and I never heard again about the creature that the old man saw in the cemetery. He didn't describe to me in detail what it was, but it must have been something terrible to make someone faint from fear. Today, I am married and have a son, but every time I pass in front of the cemetery, I feel a chill run down my spine, as if something is watching me. Therefore, be careful with your pranks and the places where they can lead you, because hidden behind walls or in the shadows, there may be a terrible creature lurking and watching you. Good night. Good evening, esteemed listeners. My name is Sérgio Carvalho, a 47-year-old resident of the capital of Minas Gerais. My livelihood comes from the trade of jewelry, rings, necklaces, bracelets, and also from the sale of watches and other articles. With the fruit of my arduous labor in my 2 commercial establishments, I managed to acquire some assets, among which is a modest rural retreat nestled at the foot of the Serra in the interior of this state. Since my childhood, I cherished the desire to inhabit a place where the verdant nature and serenity would reign, providing my children with a more intimate contact with the natural world. Thus, invariably during the vacation periods, I would go to our country house, dedicating myself to its cleaning and organization so that subsequently my family would join me. During the rest of the year, the property remained locked, with an elderly couple as our only neighbors who occasionally cast a glance at the place. It was an idyllic refuge, the materialization of a childhood longing, although I could never have conceived that such unusual entities could reside in its vicinity, as the narrative I now share will illustrate. It was the vacation of 2008, and we were in the house to celebrate the Christmas festivities and the arrival of the new year. Initially, only my immediate family was present, but with the approach of the year's end, more people would join us to liven up the atmosphere. Several days had already passed since our arrival, and I began to notice certain peculiar habits of our neighbors. Invariably at dusk, the gentleman, our neighbor, would leave his residence, go to the fence, hang something there, and, armed with a piece of wood, begin to strike a stake. He maintained this routine for a brief period, and, as night approached, he would cease his activity and return inside his house. I confess that I found the conduct strange, but the relationship we maintained was not intimate enough for me to feel comfortable inquiring about the reason for such behavior. Until one day, one of my sons arrived recounting having spotted something jumping among the branches of a tree. It resembled a dark-skinned boy, but the observation had not been entirely clear. I did not attach great importance to it, attributing the sighting to some native animal of the region. That same day, I was near the fence when I observed the neighbor gentleman leave his house carrying a small plastic bag containing something. Inside, he walked to the back of his property and hung the contents of the bag on a wire. Immediately after which, he began to strike the wooden stake, as if he were calling out to someone. With the darkness already well established, he returned to his house. I considered staying to observe further, but the dimness of the place prevented a clear view, so I decided to return to my own residence. That night, after dinner and with my children already immersed in sleep, we were surprised by a sudden interruption in the electricity supply. I went to the closet and took a flashlight to leave in my room, but before that, I cast a glance at my sleeping children and tried to fall asleep again. It was then that a dry crack, unmistakably a gunshot, echoed from the direction of our neighbor's house. I grabbed the flashlight and advanced cautiously towards the residence, keeping the light off, fearing that the elderly couple might be victims of robbery and that the intruders would perceive my approach. As I approached the house, I could hear the voice of the neighbor gentleman uttering, "Go to the room, I've already told you. Let me handle this. Go to the room." I crossed the fence and advanced towards the house, spotting the man opening the door, wielding a firearm. I immediately hid, fearful that he might mistake me for a thief. I considered calling out to him and asking if everything was all right. He walked to the fence where he usually deposited the small plastic bag and recommenced striking the stake with a piece of wood. It was at that instant that I perceived groans emanating from the thicket in the direction of the old man, and from there emerged what resembled a very small person, not exceeding 1 meter in height. The darkness still did not allow my eyes to fully adjust, hindering my vision. The old man then uttered, "Here are your things, don't come near my door." At that moment, I felt a chill run down my entire body. The old man was conversing with something in the woods, and I had no idea what it could be. Apparently, the thing had approached his door, prompting the shot. The old man grumbled and railed against the entity that was in the woods. Then he turned around and returned to his house. I began to tread the path back to mine, and upon crossing the fence and running towards the residence, I spotted something in the middle of the road, in the darkness. Initially, it seemed to be just an indistinct blur, so I turned on my flashlight and could discern what it was. It resembled a very small old woman, but with a face that evoked the image of a demon, fixing its eyes on me. I was overcome by such overwhelming fear that I dropped the flashlight to the ground and ran desperately towards the front door. Upon locking the door, my wife came to meet me, asking what I had witnessed, but I did not allow her to see. Only in the morning did I narrate everything that my eyes had seen, omitting the details for the children. I simply redoubled my caution during the night, ensuring that that thing did not approach us. In the subsequent days, more family members joined us, and we spent several more days in that house. When we prepared to return to the city, I went to leave the keys at the neighbor's house, but I did not mention a single word about what I had witnessed that night. A few years later, the old gentleman passed away, and his wife moved to live with her daughter in another locality, putting the house up for sale. I still own that property in the countryside, and invariably, during the end-of-year vacations, we return there. But I have never again seen the strange creature that my eyes beheld on that fateful night. Although I am not absolutely certain, I conjectured that the old man left offerings, gifts, and other objects for the entity that inhabited that forest, and after his passing, the creature must have left. I confess that I do not have the slightest idea of the nature of that creature, nor do I wish to find out. I merely harbor the hope of never again encountering something similar to what I saw. Good night.